Hello and welcome to the Wise Why. This morning I am joined by one of the strongest women I've ever met. And I met her very briefly at the security show, and it's Ali Leonard. I was introduced to her by Hayley Joseph, and wow, her story is powerful. As usual, though, the Wise Why is not about me, it is about my guest. So Ali, please tell people what you do.
Good morning all, wherever you are. My name's Ali Leonard. I currently am a senior security consultant at Bureau Happold. Bureau Happold is traditionally an engineering company, but I work in the specialist consulting team within the security division. We've got a team of about 25, 30, continuously growing right now. I've been in the security industry for over 20 years, much of that time earning my stripes as a frontline security officer, door supervisor, and worked my way into directorships, owning companies, partnerships within companies, head of security sites, to my current day role as I sit today.
It's interesting because everybody has gone to a nightclub at some point or been to a bar, they've been to an event, and they see the people standing around the peripherals, they're wearing a vest, but they don't really kind of notice what you do, apart from when they come up against you because they've got too drunk or they're being mouthy. I wonder if you could just explain a little bit about what it's really like, but also the journey to becoming a frontline security officer, because I don't think people realize that you actually have to be certified or trained.
Absolutely. So I'll answer the back end of your question first. So if I forget the front end, please remind me. Since in the Private Security Industry Act 2001 came into place and actually became legalized, got royal assent and became law in 2003. So since 2003, you have needed to pass a test, a course with tests at the end, and that course and that qualification has developed across the 20 years to where we are today. It used to be just a couple of days, but now we're going across 6 days. And now you also need, from Learnings of Manchester Arena Inquiry, you also need your first aid at work as well. So it could actually be a full 7-day course. Now, I am an SIA trainer myself. I do train both the first aid, I train security and door supervisor courses as well for the SIA, and one I've been doing this week. And one thing I always say at the very, very start and at the very end, to just remind those on the course, I always say to them, just remember, you can't walk off the street and become a security officer. You have to come onto a course, this course, for the learners that are on the course, let's say, because it's a professional career that you're going into. Not only do you have to pass the course, you then have to apply for a license. Just by passing the course doesn't make you a security officer. You have to apply to the SIA to get your license, and they carry out rigorous checks, criminal checks, mental health checks, identity checks, immigration checks, to make sure that you are a fit and proper person in order to be within the industry. Now, it's not quite as stringent as a vetting system to compare to the police, for example, which can take a lot longer, which does go a bit deeper into financial history and things like that. But it's a very, very similar mirrored vetting process. Which is why the industries of both police officers and security officers do align quite a lot, particularly at the frontline level. You're dealing with a lot of the same issues, and actually now the security officers, the door supervisors out there, the security industry as a whole, are plugging the gaps where the police used to be. And I say used to be because they've had a significant reduction within their operation. And now you see a lot more security officers doing street patrols. You have the business improvement districts throughout the UK, not just London, but absolutely throughout the UK, who have security officers, door supervisors in vests emblazoned with the BID, the business improvement district logo, and they are walking the streets. They are now the Bobby on the street, if we use old terminology. So, they do work in very, very close hand in hand. And sometimes you may have a more experienced door supervisor or security officer attending an incident versus, because we've got a massive police recruitment going on at the moment. And you may have a police officer who's still currently in probation because they can work and do their course at the same time. Whereas you may have someone who's been in the industry for 22 years, 30 years, 40 years. Who's attending an incident and may have that better knowledge and will advise the police officer, and it goes hand in hand. It does flip around on the other way. So I'm now going to need to ask you the first part of the question again. Okay,
it was about people, because when you go to an event,
Yeah.
and I probably forgot the question as well because that was really interesting what you were just saying. But when you go to an event and you see the security guard, the people, you know, keeping you safe, people don't realise actually some of the challenges you face. And I wondered if
No.
you could expand, because the normal everyday person who doesn't come up, who hasn't got absolutely blind drunk, who hasn't had a fight with their partner, who hasn't, I don't know, tried to smuggle something in, doesn't really see anything more than coming through the door, have a door check, show your pass, in you go. So we don't
Yep.
really see that side of it. And I wondered if you could expand a little bit about the challenges that you actually have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, as security at events, at doors, well, by doors that I mean nightclubs and bars, pubs. You know, even your local Burger King now or McDonald's has security at these venues. So like, most licensed premises now. I mean, I used to work with a company. I was a director of a company, and we used to provide door supervisors to Greggs up in Newcastle. Because they have a late night refreshment license and they're open till 4 a.m. So everyone who comes out of the clubs silly o'clock in the morning and they go to Greg's, obviously they're going to be potentially be intoxicated, and there's the potential for conflict or worse. So as a security officer, door supervisor, you deal with everything from ID checks, searches, you know, to carry out a search on someone is that, you know, it's not, you don't necessarily want to touch someone or touch their bag or go through. You're not there to embarrass people. It is there to keep you, as in you, the security officer, your colleagues, the staff members, and also the other guests and visitors safe, as well as other members of the public who may be passing. It's not there to just be a bother. You know, and it becomes a little bit frustrating when people, oh, for God's sake, I've got to go through a search. Well, it's there to keep you safe. Someone has written a risk assessment and deemed it necessary that due to the threat, the risk, the vulnerabilities, or whatever it may be, the audience profile. It's not about stereotyping. It's not about being prejudiced. It's about keeping everyone safe, and that is the bottom line of it. So carrying out searches, it could be anything. I've lost my phone. Can you help me find my phone? I've lost my friends. Can you help me find my friends? You know, you become counsellors at times because, you know, whether someone's had an argument with their boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, mum, dad, daughters, whatever. So sometimes you are standing there and you are an ear to someone, and I know that in the past, and I know a lot of people within the industry do, you sit and listen, or you stand and listen, because actually you'd rather them vent on you and let a bit of that steam out of the pot than carry on into your licensed premises or event and let it out on someone else because they knocked them over and a little bit of their drink spills out of their glass, or they stamp on their foot and their nice new white trainers has now got a dirt mark on them. So you're counsellors and you don't even realise it at times. You are the first responder. Security officers are the first responders. We call 999 or someone else calls 999, but we are on site. So generally we are the ones who will provide that initial first aid, which is why we are now, if you have an SI license, you must have as a minimum emergency first aid at work qualification, because we need to know what to do between that, that care gap between the incident occurring and the emergency services arriving. So we are the first responders who call the emergency services, or are part of that. Whether we call, so as I say, someone else calls. Sometimes you're dealing with sexual assault victims. Sometimes you're dealing, from minimal. When I say minimal, I mean in terms of the gravity of the offence. It could be groping. It could be words said, to the absolute worst case. You could be dealing with rape victims. You could be dealing with someone who's been drugged unknowingly or knowingly. So they themselves have taken drugs, and now you're dealing with a life or death situation. You can be dealing with assaults. Again, when I say minimal, just a push. So not necessarily dealing with a physical injury, but if you've never been in a conflict situation before, particularly with members of someone who you don't know, and they're shouting at you and then they push you, that can cause someone quite, some people get shocked by that and freeze. So now you're dealing with a shock as a medical issue. So you're a medical practitioner at times, you're a therapist, you're a police officer, you're lost property, you're lost and found, you're finding these things. So there's a multitude, whilst it's security or door supervisor or bouncer or whatever you want to call, actually the job entails a multitude of tasks within, and I think that's really misunderstood, because no one calls for security. Sorry, no one likes security until they need security. And whether you've called us whatever name you called us last week, or even on your way in, or you were rude, we said good morning, you just blanked us and walked through, we still have to respond to you in a professional manner and in a courteous manner, and do our duties as per our code of conduct that we sign up to with the SIA. So, you know, we have to carry out our duties no matter what.
And it's so well paid, right?
yeah, I'm living in my mansion right now. You know, as you go up the chain, you know, I I see ads. I get my job, even though I'm very happy and comfortable with my job. You still, from when you were applying for jobs earlier on in life, you still get those emails come through. You know, I saw a security manager job. So someone who is going to be responsible for a team. They want you to write policies, they want you to write procedures, they want you to write the assignment instructions, do training, liaise with the client, do HR processes, all of that sort of stuff. £27,000 a year is what this company was offering. You know, for a security manager job, they want you to have X amount of years in the industry. They want you to have one thing which, you know, whilst the security industry is a professional industry, because you need to have a qualification and pass the vetting as well. There is a progression, so you can do the entry level for most. There's close protection courses level 3, but it's a level 2 qualification on the off-qual scale. But you can go on and do level 3s, level 4s, level 5s. You can even go and do undergraduate degrees, postgraduate degrees, diplomas, whatever it is may be. So there is a progressional path in terms of education. And education is not for everyone, so you could go and do MVQs, you know, do a bit of learning and applying it to your work, which does suit a lot more people. But you know, when the same way that you would have to, as a head of an accountant, you would want them to have an accountancy qualification, as it were, as in a formal qualification. And I do find it astounding sometimes when they want a qualification, you know, a level 5 or something or above course can cost over £1,000. So to then only pay £27,000 with that requirement, I always find a bit odd, because if you're asking me to invest in myself or have invested in myself, but you're not gonna pay me back for it. And the frontline officers as well. I think national minimum, and I stand to be corrected, but I think it's about 10.52 right now. And if you look on job boards, unfortunately, there are a lot of frontline officers jobs out there being offered at 10.52, £11 an hour. So very, very, and it has historically always been very, very close to that minimum wage level, unfortunately.
And people don't realise you actually get injured in the line of your day-to-day job, don't you? So I worked in retail and I saw it firsthand, where shoplifters and people who would come in intoxicated into the department store would kick off, and then you would be in that situation where you're trying to control somebody, and of course you get injured. I think you've been injured yourself, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been a few years since I've worked frontline, but when I used to work the frontline, I've been punched, I've been slapped, I've been kicked, I've been pinched and scratched. Unfortunately, as well, I've been stabbed a couple of times as well. For me, the worst was being spat at. That is a bit, that was at times I saw a little bit of a red mist at times, and I lose my cool. 9.9 times out of 10, I can retaliate in a non-confrontational, actually distract the person away from what they've said verbally or trying to do physically. But actually, spitting for me is the worst of the worst. I feel it's quite degrading and quite disrespectful. But I've again violence in the security industry and towards security officers, I don't think doesn't get highlighted enough. And I think I know that people have tried to set up petitions to the government to get security officers recognised and to get the offences against security officers recognised, similar to that to emergency services, which I think it absolutely should. I know that, again, a company I used to work for, we had a contract for a very well-known lower-end supermarket chain, and one of our officers, he was and they were expected to stop a shoplifter, which he did. He stopped the shoplifter, but what he didn't know was outside the shop, because you have to go through a process. So you have to go through scone, which is a scone. You see them approach, select the item, conceal the item, continue to observe them, watch them go through non-payment, and then exit the store. So you're not actually allowed to stop a shoplifter until point of exit, till they've actually exited the store, because they could still turn around and say, no, I'm going to go and pay for this. So you've got to wait until they walk out the store. So he followed process to a T. He stopped the guy outside the store. What he didn't know was the guy had a friend with him who took the back end of a claw hammer and put it into his head, and he was on because we were only being paid as a security company. I think at the time we were being paid 10.20 or something per hour as the security company. We've got to pay PAYE, insurance. We've got to recruit them. We've got to train them. We've got to put them in a uniform. We've got, we've got to go and visit them. We've got to get reports to them. So there's a cost to us. And at the end of the day, we're a business and we need to make profit as well. So we could only pay national minimum wage in order to maintain that contract. So he got a claw hammer in the back of his head, and he still, that unfortunately is on disability benefit to this day, because it has affected him not only physically but mentally as well. The mental toil that security officers go through, I don't think is appreciated. You see, I'm of that age now where I listen to LBC in the morning. Other radio shows are available, but I listen to LBC in the morning. And I was listening a couple of days ago, and apparently the head of Iceland has put out that violence towards retail staff is at its astronomical level. What the example I gave you about the claw hammer, that was about 9 years ago. So actually, violence towards security officers or door supervisors has been there for a very, very long time, and now it's starting to affect other people. Now it's an issue.
Yeah.
But actually, it should have always been an issue. It absolutely should always been an issue. You go onto train stations. TfL have got a great campaign for their staff where they've got pictures of kids with a speech bubble, posters of kids with the speech bubble says, my mummy came home and was crying last night because of the name you called her, or my daddy doesn't want to go to work because of when you hit him, he doesn't want to go back to work anymore. I think that's such a powerful and impactful message and poster that they do. And I always stop and look at it and think, yeah, do you know what? Even at the end of the day, it's a human being. You take off the tie, you take off the uniform, the fleece, whomever it is, whether it's a retail worker, security worker, police officer, whomever it may be. It's a human being at the end of the day. And would you want your mum, dad, brother, sister, cousin, aunt, uncle, whomever it may be, wife, daughter, husband, would you want them treated like that? Because I would, and you go back to it's that self-respect, that your own morals and values as well as to how you treat someone. Yes, you can be frustrated, and we're all human, we all have buttons, but it's not that person's fault, that you can't come in because you're not wearing the right dress code, or because your ticket's not scanning properly. That's not that person's fault. But they may be the barrier at that point in time, but it's not that person's fault. They are following policy. They are following procedure. I mean, I'll go off on a small tangent here, so feel free to bring me back in. I think
it's okay. No, it's good, because I did say to you before in the studio that we don't talk and we don't realize you're kind of like the invisible barrier that nobody, because when people think about security, they think about CCTV, they think about access control, they think about lots of different things, but they don't necessarily think about the person who is standing when they go into the shop. They don't necessarily think about the person when they go through into a museum and why they are checking the bag. And hey, we've got embarrassed because I've got a packet of Tampaxes because it's the time of the month. That's what we're thinking about, rather than actually this person is checking my bag. Because I remember this being told to me by a doorman in Glasgow many years ago, because I couldn't understand why he was checking me and not my husband. Now it's a different husband to who I have now. But I remember thinking, why are you checking me? And he said it was because the women brought in the knives.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, the people, unfortunately, you write what you write as your career, as your job title on your CV. I write what I write on mine. A criminal will write criminal. If they were being honest, they'd write professional criminal. We know just through, if you look at the cyber world, we know that as soon as you update your antivirus, it's already out of date, because the criminal has has revised its way through. People are getting, and you just need to look at knife crime throughout London. You could say the UK, but very much within London at the moment. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And these kids, and they are kids, they're finding more and more ways and more to hide these knives and or bladed items. A few years ago I was head of security at a site in southeast London, and we were talking with the police, and we were talking about sharing intelligence. And I said, actually, I've seen, because I try and keep in touch with the local gang units and just the general intelligence of that sort of world. And they're walking with crutches to create a limp, to give the impression of a limp, because they've got a machete down their leg, which is impacting their gait, so they can't bend their leg properly. So it used to be that they used to get picked up on the street because they're not walking properly, because it's obvious that there's an issue with their gait. And by gait, I mean GAIT, your walking gait. So if they walk around with crutches, there's an excuse as to why their gait's been impacted. So, and then when they find the person they want to do whatever to, crutches go out the way, pull out the knife, and they do what they do. So that's an 11-year-old, a 17-year-old who's thinking of these things or have been told these things to implement. So we have to continuously keep in touch with the local intelligence, with the national intelligence, with the international intelligence, because all it takes is one person. And with the likes of social media these days, and not only social media, like I use social media. I'm sure, in fact, I know you use social media as well. And I put like my gym photos on my social media, whereas other people will put techniques on, and that will last 10 hours, 12 hours, 1 hour, 24 hours, in order to put techniques to how to overcome something. I see on Instagram little videos every now and again. Get this bottle of vodka into your next festival, and it's your hairbrush that you undo the handle, and the hairbrush isn't actually a hairbrush. It's the canisters. So you then screw it through, or you tuck. Again, it's very much female orientated. You tuck like IV style bags into your bra, or you hold them in between your thighs, or strap them to your thighs, because they're not going to search you there, or because unfortunately females in the security industry are almost like gold dust, very much door supervisors.
I'm really glad you've mentioned that, because yes, females, particularly on the door, but females in the security market, and I know we've got a comment from Hayley here, but females in the security market are they're thin on the ground.
They are. It's getting better. It is getting better. 100% it's getting better, but we've still got a long way to go. And we do, when you do searching, as in a pat down search, and whenever I teach, I always say use the back of your hands, protect yourself, because we're in a claim society now. So I don't want an officer who I've taught to do it that way, because just going up to someone that way could be quite intimidating. If you use the back of your hands, you can still feel exactly the same, but it's less intimidating, and there's a less likelihood chance that you're going to be called out for an assault. So also as well, so if you're doing what we call the traditional pat down searches, a man can't do it to a woman. So that's why they hide it on the women. And even if you won through, if you're looking for that, if you're looking for drugs, it's not going to go through a metal detector. If people are bringing in additional alcohol, it's not going to go through a metal detector. And if women are hiding things in the hair, because a lot of security officers, unfortunately, either through I say a lot, that's wrong with me to sound, because I'm stereotyping. There are some security officers who lose interest, or are there just to, as there is in any industry in this world, they're there to punch in, punch out, just to claim their check. They don't have the pride in their work, so they won't scan properly. So people are still able, or if they scan over the belt, it will beep. Oh, it's just my belt. Well, if I'll say, do you mind just taking your belt off for me? Because there are belt buckles now which you can convert, which flick out, and you can get a lock knife in them. Again, these are all things which are advertised on social media.
Wow.
Like hairbrushes where the handle is a knife when you put it into the actual hairbrush head, as it were. So there's a lot of way. As I say, the sophistication of the criminal world is getting more and more, and they're advertising it as a handy knife, or when you go camping. Well, if you're going camping, you'll just take a knife with you, because you can carry around a knife that's 3 inches or less, as long as it's not a lock knife and you've got a reasonable course to do it. If you got stopped with a tent and a sleeping bag and your family or just on yourself, I'm going camping, a police officer say, thank you very much, enjoy your trip. But so you wouldn't have to hide it in your belt or your hairbrush or anything like that. So these are mischievous and malicious techniques in order to cause harm to you and or to us, which is why we have search techniques in place, which is why sometimes if something we don't feel something's right, we ask you to come to the side and we'll do a little bit more of a thorough check. We might ask you to, we don't touch things, so we'll ask you to take your stuff out your bag. We don't touch things for two reasons. A, to protect ourselves in two ways. One, because we don't know what you've got stored in your bag. So if we put our hands in, we can get needles, knives, all sorts, razor blades. And number two, if we find something untoward, you could say, well, you put that in there. You put that in there. I didn't. That wasn't in there. So we ask you to empty your bag. We'll then look at an empty bag and then we'll have a look through and have, and this is why we'll ask you to empty your pockets. We're not going to stick our hand into our pocket. We're protecting ourselves. So it's an inconvenience for you for the sake of all of a minute. All right. It's a minute of your life that you might have lost and been inconvenienced. But I'll tell you what, being stabbed or dealing with an overdose or you getting spiked with your drink because someone's been able to bring GHB or a hypnol in or something worse, ketamine or something like that, that's a bigger inconvenience than the 1 minute of searching.
And those things, some of the things you've just mentioned, when I was younger, happened to me. I've been spiked, and I had no idea I'd been spiked. And it was a security door person who looked after me whilst I was completely. I mean, I was irrational. I was. I was also quite paranoid and a little bit violent, not because I meant to be, but because I've been spiked. And thankfully, the door person recognized it. And it's not something I thought I'd be talking about, but some of the things that I went through when I was younger, if it wasn't for, and I've just sat here listening going, oh my goodness, the amount of times the security door people helped me when I was in my early 20s. Even at points saved my life. So I'm going to just say thank you to whoever you were that I was a little bit rude to a few times. I didn't mean to be, because I can remember one time going back to a place that I'd never been. I'd never been in there as far as I remembered. And the door said, you can't come in here. You're a liability. And I went, I've never been here. And he went, you were here last week. I went, no, I wasn't here. And we had a conversation. It turned out I'd been definitely had something. So we are talking about in the early 2000s where having GHB put into a drink was quite normal. Thankfully, I was safe every single time. But wow, I don't mean I shouldn't have said that. It was quite normal. That's a really bad
but it was prevalent, and actually, we as society didn't have. I mean, I myself. Very, very early on at university, my drink got spiked on one of the few occasions when I was going out, and unfortunately, I became a victim of quite serious sexual assault. Thankfully, to this day, I have no memory of it. It was only because I woke up the next morning and didn't have any underwear on, which is not necessarily unlike me, because sometimes when I've had a few too many Pepsi Colas, I can't be bothered. Can't be bothered to put that back on. You just put your trousers back on, you put your skirt back on, and that was that. And it's actually one of the reasons why I was sort of in the security career, in the security industry anyway. But it's my undergraduate degree is effectively biomedical sports science, and I thought actually I don't want to do that. I tried it out for a little bit, and I thought I want to carry on in my security policing career because I don't want anyone to go through what I went through, because it took me to my lowest point in life. And I wanted to make the world a better place, and I didn't want anyone to go through what I had to go through. So it's one of those things where you take a really crap situation, you try and put a positive spin on it for you and for other people in life. I went on and did a master's at Loughborough in security management. I'm currently doing my international security risk management with University of London. I've been director of security companies. I've worked with police forces, given my experience as to how the police let me down, because the police did let me down, because again, sexual assault was quite new in terms of MEP had it quite locked down quite well with Sapphire, but I went to the University in Wales, and unfortunately, South Wales Police didn't have that set up They do now. They have a great setup now, but absolutely everything can continue to be improved. And it's only, unfortunately, through your experience, through my experience, we had to go through that so that we have the improvements that are in place today. You know, you can, naturally now you can go up to a bar and you could say, have you got a cover that I could put over my glass? And they will give you one, and your straw sticks out of it.
Yeah.
That's great. You can have caps that you put on your bottle. But we had to go through what we needed to go through for that to be in place, and to that to be normal.
And I can remember 10 years later, my cousins, funny enough, in Wales, posting pictures on social media of this cap with a straw and them going out. But of course, we went through this really. I was lucky, unlike you. I didn't get any sexual abuse, but thank you for sharing that, because you know, and the reason why you're in the security market, because that's really powerful. It saves me asking why you would do it. So thank you for answering the question without me answering it. I'm going to go quickly to what Hayley's been saying, because obviously Hayley is another lady in security, and you wouldn't be here if she hadn't stopped you. So high five for advocating for your sector, Ali. I've been protected during a messy marriage by a stranger, a doorman, and he ensured I got home safe. And who knows how different things could have panned out without that intervention. Hayley, I will absolutely say I've been there. So yes, thank you for putting that one there. High five, Ali, for advocating for your sector during, repeating it. But yes, absolutely. And I don't think, but we hadn't talked about it, but domestic arguments happen. And it is the doorman who is there, the door person. So I shouldn't say doorman, that's very 80s. The door person is there, and it's that person who gets you safe. So, you know, what you do, and I'm just going to touch on it very quickly because I'm talking for half an hour, but there's no sick pay, is there?
You get statutory sick pay. Statutory sick pay. Again, the guy, you know, it's not a standard income protection. It's not a standard health insurance. It's not a standard death in service. It's not a standard. These should be things that you get as standard as a security officer working for a frontline. And it's not, unfortunately. There are companies, I'm not saying there aren't companies who don't do it. There are companies who go out there and do it. But, you know, unfortunately, because of the pay to security companies from buyers, and it did improve. But unfortunately, now we're you know, finances are getting tighter. The first thing to get cut is security. It is always the first thing to get cut until something goes wrong. Something goes wrong, and then the security goes up. We're very reactive, and there's very few companies. There are companies out there. There are events out there. Of course, there are who are proactive and who have a very, very strong security culture. But you have a CFO, you have a CEO, you have a COO, you may have a CISO. But you very rarely have someone on the board who is a security representative. Security often, and this is absolutely no disrespect to FM managers, but security, particularly with buildings, often sit under an FM manager. Now, and I can assure you, my ex and my current family and stuff like that can attest to this. I am a security expert. I'm not a cleaning expert. I'm not a lift expert. Okay. You can't be a jack of all, a master of none, as for what is effectively life-saving and life-assuring services. Security is one of those. But as I say, we are the first responders. So you can't just have, just go and do the SII course and you're okay. If you're managing something, you should have the appropriate experience, and you should have further than just that entry-level experience. You should have further qualifications which cement your knowledge, your experience, your your attributes in the industry, so that you show that this is an industry for you, and you've invested in yourself. As I say, CPD is free. You can read stuff. There are lots of free courses online and in person as well. So it's not just physically about investing financially, investing time. You know, time is the most valuable thing in the world. So if you are showing you're investing your time into your career, it shows that you're serious about it. But I'm no good at cleaning. I couldn't tell you what type of cleaning thing to use on wood, other than, I don't know, Mr. Sheen maybe, but that's not something to use in a commercial setting because it's too expensive. So so I'm not an expert in cleaning. So, and I'm not an expert in lift management because I've know nothing about lifts. I'm not an expert about how to fix a door, because I'm not that. So to put all of these things under one person, they're going to be good on maybe certain areas and lax in another. And I'm not saying one's more important than the other, not in any way, shape, or form, but you very rarely have security representatives at senior management or board levels with companies. And I think that's a travesty, if I'm honest with you, because security is such an important factor, and it's always until when it goes wrong, then we think about it. Look at the reports. Why wasn't this reported? Well, if you're looking at your reports on a regular basis, I like to deal with molehills. I don't like to deal with mountains. So I want to know when something goes wrong at the first point. And then if it goes again on the second point, I know I've got a trend, so I've got to deal with it. But when often after major incidents and major or not even major incidents generally, there's been a pattern beforehand, and that pattern's only picked up after the fact, or after the event, or after the incident. And it's such a travesty, because we've all, it's wonderful. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, but we can be proactive and we can stop these things. And if you can, I can honestly put my hand on my heart and put my head on my pillow at night and say, I always do in the operational field, from supervisors, team leaders, management, directorship, I've always done the best that I could do, and I've done everything I can, getting calls at 2:00 in the morning because there's been a stabbing on site. Okay, this is what I want you to do, X, Y, Z. I get in my car and I drive to site, because I need to be there, because if I'm asking my officers to deal with it, I need to deal with it as well, and I need to be there to support my officers, because to see someone stabbed is not great. To see someone attempt suicide by jumping into the Thames or jumping off a railway bridge is not to talk them down. You have to provide that support and that wraparound for your staff. And a lot of companies, a lot of people don't necessarily do that. And if you haven't experienced it yourself, if you've not gone through it yourself, you wouldn't have that empathy and that understanding and need of why that's important to support your officers in that way. You've put it on the bio, but I'm sit on the advisory board for IFPO, and they have a fantastic mental health first aid module for security officers. So and it's also for managers as well, so that if you're not necessarily understanding of the security industry, you can do this module and you can do the mental health training to understand what it is your officers go through. To hear someone talk to them about being a victim of domestic violence, or to hear that they've been sexually assaulted, or that takes a toll, and you take that home with you, and then you've got to go and put a smile on your face to your family and be nice to your wife and your kids, and it gives you a better, or your husband, or your boyfriend, or whomever it may be, and you've got to put that smile on your face and carry on. And actually, who's there for you? Who's your security? Because and it's not, it's a really underappreciated. We're making a song and dance now about violence in retail shops. It's been there for years. It's absolutely been there for years. It's only now because it's affecting everyone else. But it was okay when they were kicking the security officer. It was okay when they were stabbing the security officer. That was okay because he signed up for that. She signed up for it. So that's okay. But now it's affecting the shop staff. It's an issue.
But it was. We'll finish on this note, and normally I do a question to me, but I think this is far more interesting. So this violence towards security officers was happening in the 80s. I was working on the shop floor. I've worked in retail since since I was 13. So, and my first job was working for a retired police officer. Then I ended up in another small shop, and then I went to large department stores, and they had a dedicated security team back in those days. And that team, and I could call the people out because some of them I'm still in touch with today. They were dealing with serious violence way back, and it's not something that's ever talked about. And I think there were officers that had been assaulted and they were off work. And the other thing was that the security officers weren't just attacked in the workplace, they were attacked in their personal life.
Absolutely.
Because people, and as I said, I want your opinion on this quickly, and then we'll finish. But I think it's important to realize that your job doesn't stop when you go home.
Absolutely not. What you experience and what you deal with on the night, on the day, whatever it may be, you've got to. I've dealt with stuff where someone's cracked their head open, literally, and I've held their eyeball in their face because because the impact on the floor and cracked their cheekbone. I was covered in their blood, absolutely covered. I've got to go home and take that shirt off. I've got to put that shirt in the washing machine. You know, when that shirt comes out the washing machine, I'm going to remember it. Now, it doesn't stop. It doesn't. Oh, right, badge comes off my arm, or I take my lanyard off. Thanks very much, guys, and I'm happy. No, you carry that home. So the wraparound for security officers hasn't historically been there. It's getting better. It is getting better, but still, again, a lot more needs to be done. The appreciation for security officers. There is a Security Officer Appreciation Day. Funnily enough, it's 24/7, 24th of July every year. But to be honest with you, I think every day should be Security Officer Appreciation Day. You know, just little things to appreciate. Just say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, have a good day, have a good evening to your security officer, because they've got to stand there, sit there for 8 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours at times. Sometimes they're doing double shifts because they work one job and they work another job, you know, because they're not paid enough to just have a lifestyle. So, you know, appreciate your security officers.
We'll finish on that note. Thank you so much for a really insightful look into what it is to be a frontline security officer. I really appreciate your time.
No problem at all, Kirsty. It was really good. I appreciate you inviting me.
I'm just trying to find my mouse now. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.